hypes! This week's episode of Gundam Reconguista NG was an action-packed mecha fest to be seen, and it looks like we're finally getting back to the old-school style of Tomino Gundam storytelling. Everybody's gonna start dying! So there's a lot of ridiculous banter in this week's episode, but really, it boils down to this. 3 factions are fighting in this week's episode. We have the Toa Songans, we have the Amerian Army, and then we have Mask and his group, which is teamed up with the G8 Corps as they're testing out their brand new mobile armor weapon, the Yggdrasil, which is a very nice reference to the Norse mythology giant tree, which also happens to have this beam, which fires off in these weird branch-like motions, which is very similar to a tree and is very fitting, making this week's episode all the more distinct. And I especially liked that the name of the episode was Kaleidoscope. I was wondering why that was the case, and you really get to see why in this week's episode. When the Yggdrasil actually fires its cannon, it has this weird multicolored shards of glass which appear right in front of its cannon, which is technically its eye, and then it fires off and all of these like weird vines just shoot off randomly into space, crushing and destroying anything that gets caught in its wake. It's a pretty impressive mobile armor, and I gotta say it's pretty unique for the series, and it's got an incredibly simple design. It's basically just a red pyramid. But aside from that, we also have a few other new mobile suits that make appearances this week. First, let's talk about Luen Lee, Mask's brand new mobile suit, which is called the Cabalcali, and this thing is just wicked looking. It's black, it's red, it has a real slick design with lots of armor pieces all over it, and sure, just tons of hidden weapons all over it, but I'm sure they're saving that for the finale of the series and for the big eventual confrontation between Luen Lee and Bellry Zenom, which we all know that's coming. They are building that up like crazy. But the other cool mobile suits that appear this week are brand new ones for both Mick and Klimnik, which are the Dharma and the Dahak. And these, again, are just very unique designs. One of them is just this big, bloated-looking mobile suit, which almost sort of resembles a mobile armor, but seems to function more as like a typical mobile suit. And then you have the Dahak, which is basically just sort of your standard-looking mobile suit, except that it has these weird 3-pronged legs, which kind of reminds me of what they're doing with the G Lucifer. Speaking of which, the G Lucifer even gets to do some cool things this week when it fires off its crazy beams, and I especially loved getting to see the G-Self go into its assault mode when it was fighting against the Yggdrasil, and this was a pretty obvious call. I mean, a lot of people were guessing that Barara Pior was going to be killed in this week's episode, and lo and behold, she was. This is a scene where I should feel upset for the character dying, but I really just didn't get to know this character at all. All I could really tell you about Barara is that she was Mask's right-hand woman. And that's pretty much it. They don't really get into any of her backstory whatsoever. There really wasn't an episode focusing on her. She was basically just one of the side villains of the series who had an obsession with one of the other, like, big baddies of the entire show. Despite that, she definitely gave quite a show this week, especially with her crazy-ass expressions, but eventually she was defeated. But this is the thing that I think was a really nice twist. Pretty much all of the big main forces that were in this battle in this week's episode, like all the big battleships in space, were completely destroyed. All of them. A lot of the big higher-ups. Even Ida's father is killed in this week's episode, and they have no time to shed tears because they have another battle that is getting ready to take place with Mask and their group. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Reconguista NG, just so much action going on in this one, and lots of setup. I especially loved how they opened up with the episode with the testing out of the Yggdrasil, which I wasn't all that impressed with it at first, but the way they use its beams and the way they like actually animate it and everything just looks really incredible. And that's definitely one of the biggest strengths of Reconguista NG, if not its biggest strength, is its actual style, its artwork, and its animation, which was really showcased to some of its highest quality in this week's episode. And another thing that I've been sort of harping on as the series has been going on, I love that the Megafauna crew, like each member like of the Mobile Suit Force, like they all have their own special individualized mobile suit. I mean, there are a few repeats in there, but for the most part, everybody seems to like have their own special suit, which does something cool. And it was really strange actually getting to see Naruto actually sort of helping out in the battle, even though she's technically just sort of taking a back seat in the G Lucifer. I'm not sure how much she's actually helping in that battle, but I'm guessing that Raraya was doing most of the work. But I still love the little effects they do with all the different backpacks they do for the Gundam, like the G-Self, how when it goes into assault mode, it actually has like this red color scheme that goes over its entire body. It just makes it look all the more intimidating, and it really goes well with the whole assault thing. Just makes it seem all the more badass. But it was just so obvious that Barara was going to be killed in this episode. There was lots of build up to it. Just the fact that she was going out into battle and that she was feeling a lot of jealousy towards Manny, who she reluctantly had to thank in this week's episode, so you could tell that really the stakes were high for her in terms of trying to impress Lu and Lee, but it didn't really go anywhere. And this is probably just going to fuel Mask's anger even more, which is just going to lead to an even more intense confrontation between him and Bellry, which that has to be where it's heading at this point. All I know is I'm really excited. But this week's episode was pretty good. Just a lot of really great action, lots of really good animation and artwork, and lots of ridiculous banter. My only complaint with the series still stands is that it is a little confusing at points, especially with all the techno jargon, and I wish we could have gotten to know these characters a little bit more, because despite the fact that a lot of characters died this week, and Barara died, I just don't really feel all that bad about it. I didn't, like, have any emotion while watching that. But I still had a lot of fun watching this episode. It was just a really great Mobile Suit battle. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Gundam fans. If you've been following the series, you have to check this one out, because things are building up for the big finale of Gundam Reconquista NG. Check it out, guys. Thank you for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Gundam Reconquista NG. Before you guys leave, make sure and subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and check out our brand new podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. It's a brand new video podcast that me and Christian have been working on. Just in the last week, we did an episode talking about all the brand new spring anime that's getting ready to come out. What brand new shows do you want us to look at and review and discuss? Watch that video and let us know. Thank you guys again for watching, and stay dandy, baby.